Hey everybody, Leslie here. Short title to this video, and you're like, just ask, what does that mean? Well, two different areas I'm going to cover today. Just ask regarding financial in the law firm, and also actually three areas: work, deadlines, that type of thing, and work performance, meaning the type of things they might cover in a review. Although I could tell you there have been very few times I've ever had a review in a law firm, but some law firms I know will probably do that. But when I say just ask, there are times that we don't, because we don't ask for that pay raise. Let's say that you are a green paralegal, you are a newbie, and you've been working hard and you get up to that year point and there's no raise, there's no bonus, there's no raise. And I am never one that expected a bonus. I didn't get into that mindset. But if I did a good job, I expected even a small raise, just because I was doing a great job, and that's kind of the norm in our society, and that's what I expected. But if I ever felt that I slacked off, no, I shouldn't get a raise. But what I did was I had to understand my own performance in order to determine, should I get a raise? And so when the year comes, all along that year, you should write down every document that you're working on, write down the title of it, because that you're learning how to do all these new things. You're learning how to file properly in the hard copies of the documents. You're learning how to file within a court system. You're learning how to upload orders. You're learning how to do all this stuff. Write down everything that you're doing. Write down, do a heading like documents, and write all the documents you've learned how to do. Did you learn how to work a trial? Did you learn how to prepare for a trial? What does that mean? What did you do? What did you learn? So that when you go, and let's say that your raise time comes, your anniversary comes, you're there 1 year and nobody's saying anything, you can go speak to, if the attorney doesn't handle that and they have a manager, you need to speak to the manager privately and ask, like, are we going to have a review or anything? Because is there, are there raises usually given after a year, or do we have review process? And if they say the firm is not giving raises out, or no, you didn't get a raise, you won't be getting a raise this year. And that's all they say. And there are other employees there, and they didn't say no one here is getting a raise. They just say you're not getting one. You have to ask. And that's why this is called just ask. You have to ask. Why not? And be nice about it. No aggressiveness. Just be assertive, like, by coming out and bringing this subject to the surface. Because if you don't bring this to the surface, it's going to fester in you, and you're going to be unhappy. You're not going to know if you were ever doing a good job, because lawyers don't tell you so often. They often do not tell you that you're doing a great job. Even if you knocked it out of the park, they will not pat you on the back. Figuratively, they will not say, that was fantastic. I had a few do that. But over 30 years of being in this field, it's more often than not, nothing is said. But this is what I do. I ask if my performance, the way I handled something, was that okay? Because I want to work according to the way the attorney wants me to work. Was that okay that I did it that way? And they'll go, yeah, most of the time. So there was no reason for me to have this doubt, but I'd rather know than assume. Assuming and guessing in a law firm is death, because you will make mistakes if you start assuming. If you assume that document is correct, and you know your attorney is not really looking, I don't mean, but if you've proofed it and you know you feel it's perfect, but the attorney is not really looking over the document, and this is when you're new, you need to make sure the attorney is looking at the document. I've had to ask attorneys, could you make sure that you're really looking that over because I'm so new? And, after 6 months, I didn't need to say that anymore. But in the beginning, you absolutely do. And you have to ask them, is this okay? Is it okay? Do I have the right heading on this? And they'll say, oh, yeah, that's right, you did. And then they'll go over it with you. But they're not trainers. Don't know how to. Most attorneys are not teachers. They don't want to be teachers. They didn't sign up for that. They might say you'll get training within the ad that they placed, but they're banking on maybe a paralegal training you, and that paralegal does not want to train you. I happened to walk into a situation in the first job where the paralegal loved training, and the attorney I ended up working with loved training. That was a blessing. But most law firms, as I found out afterwards, after I left that job, they don't want to train you in anything. So you have to learn this. That's why I put up the Paralegal Inner Circle class, so that you would know how to do many, many things that I teach you in that class before you ever send out your resume and cover letter. And then I teach you how to apply for those jobs. But you have to have some of this legal knowledge that I give you before you apply for those jobs, okay? Catch my drift? So you can't just, you might have the foundational office skills. And attorneys sometimes will say, I could bring anybody in off the street and train them. But they don't train. That's the thing. They don't train. I had more training, as I've said before, in retail and working in a supermarket and fast food. I had a manager right by my side in fast food training me. I had somebody else training me in the back on how to make guacamole. So, oh, you're so welcome. So when you see training in the ad, don't bank on that. No. Now, people have walked into hard situations when they banked on the training, and then the paralegal that's been there for years is expected to train you. That was done to me as an experienced paralegal. Honestly, I walked into a new paralegal job. I was very experienced, and the former paralegal had filing backed up on a table that had to get done. I was going to be thrown in the middle of a trial, so I had to, that's number one. When you're preparing for trial, that filing has to wait. But that filing was very backed up. And so I was expected to catch that up, but there was no way to do that. And then they hired someone who had no experience as a paralegal and expected me to train her to be a paralegal. I had no time to do that. So you see, that's one of the reasons I developed my class, Paralegal Inner Circle class, because I'm giving you information about the practical side of working in the office and what you should know, and before you jump into this, because you'll feel like you're sinking if you don't. So the registration's open until the 12th. Please join us. Look at one of the previous videos and click on the link for lesliesansonwilliams.com Paralegal Inner Circle class, and you can enroll there. Okay, I hope you'll join us. It's important to ask, I hope I'm getting this across, ask all the questions in the world in your first job and write them down. Write the question down and the answer, and don't have it all jumbled on one paper. You're so welcome, Robert. Oh, Mondo, I'm glad your comment popped up again so I could see your name. The purpose of these videos is to get you up to speed. and then bring you into my class, because that's the next step. These videos are good, for giving you that background info and giving you info about certain areas of law that you might want to work into. But then the practical side, I really feel you need to be in a class that's short and sweet, and you can get it done, and you'll see what I mean when you're in the class. And there are videos there, and there are PDFs to download. You cannot download the videos. And then the private group is where you can pick my brain about those things you need, the questions you need to ask as you're going through the class. It's invaluable. So when you go, again, you have to ask. Women can be very hesitant to ask. And I know men, maybe some men feel that way too. But when you know during that whole year you've worked that your work was very good, yes, you made some mistakes, and yes, you will make mistakes. But if you keep asking, you'll make very few mistakes. When you don't ask, then you're just going to go, well, nobody's here to train me, so I'm just going to do. No, you don't go that way in legal, because there's a client that needs you to do it right. Even if the attorney is a slacker and doesn't care about his or her work, you have to care. You have to be that person, and you have to pick it up and run with the ball. Even if, if you want a sports analogy, even if the quarterback drops the ball, you got to run with it. So don't you drop it and say and assume something and don't ask. During that year, you need to ask the attorney, like I said, did I do that correctly? Am I doing that right? You need to have a list of all the documents you've learned, all of that. Have it there. Oh, you're welcome, Lisa. Well, I mean, usually that annual, time, if, I was told in an interview for my very first job that I would get have a review after 6 months. And then they would determine if I was, eligible for a raise. And they knew I was driving a long distance. That was my choice. But that was uplifting to me. And so I was working really hard. I was learning a lot. I worked 3 trials during. I worked till 11 o'clock, when we were prepping for trial, and the attorney and I were communicating via telephone. And back then, this is a long time ago, we had fax machines. I had a fax machine at the house. And I was faxing documents back, and we were doing that and doing revisions, because he had to file something with the court when the trial started. And so I was learning, very quickly, and I was putting that extra effort in. Yet when the 6-month time came, I wasn't hearing anything, that there was a review coming. And then the 7th month passed, and my husband was saying, just ask. Just ask. So I went to my paralegal mentor, and she said, just ask the managing partner. And so he's the one that interviewed me. He said he had no memory of saying that. Now that could be true, right? But I give the benefit of the doubt. But the fact remains he said it. And so I felt very betrayed. And even if he forgot, and he was green in handling things like this. So I was learning about that most attorneys are not fantastic managers. That's not what they signed up for. Yet they're managing, he's a managing partner, helping to manage a law firm. So you have to become good at it. And I had just quit a business. I had just closed a business down. So I was used to talking to my employees, my teenagers that I hired, and keeping them on the straight and narrow, and watching their work and encouraging them. And if one was with me for a while, which one was full-time, I gave her raises, and told her why she was getting a raise. And I couldn't have asked for better employees. So I didn't want them to go anywhere. And attorneys overall don't have a grasp of HR. They really don't. So you have to ask, am I doing a good job? You have to ask, how do I do this when you're first starting? When you don't get a raise, and let's say it's usually at the year mark. It's not usually 6 months. It's unless they say something like the attorney did with me. But when you're at that year mark, you need to, give let a week or two pass past your anniversary date from the day you started, and then ask who you're supposed to ask. It might be the administrator of the law firm if it's big enough and they have a manager, but if they don't, you're going to have to ask the attorney. If the attorney said, "Oh, why do you think you deserve a raise, though?" That may throw you for a loop, but you should be prepared when you go in there and you say, "Can I talk to you for a minute? Do you have a minute?" Sometimes they'll say no because they get worried, but say, "I really need to talk with you." And then, I wouldn't shut the door if possible. I would leave it cracked open just to be politically correct. And then ask that question like, I was told that I might get a raise, and the working title, the working word there is might, that you may get a raise. And so if they say, well, we can't really afford it, well, that's one thing. Then you have to decide whether you're going to stay at that law firm or not. Because if you're never going to get a raise, then you're going to be staying at the same salary. The other thing is, if they said, well, why do you think you deserve a raise? You need to come in with everything you've learned that year. And it's good to know this for yourself, okay? So that you can feel proud of everything you've done, even if you made some boner mistakes. You will avoid making those mistakes the more questions you ask. When you start just jumping the gun, when you start thinking when you really don't, that's a huge, huge dark path to go down, because you've got a client's future at stake, if you make a mistake. And that's important for you to realize. And you have to be conscientious enough and caring enough about that client and your work product that you put out, that you're going to work really hard, even if you're green, not to make mistakes, because you're going to ask a lot of questions. And being shy is not, and listen, I was so shy, I couldn't carry on conversations as a young person. So I know all about intense shyness, but that's no excuse for not asking questions. Even if an attorney is acting belligerent, or they're acting a little bit too assertive, and they're all that, and their ego's out the wazoo. Yeah, some are like that, but I'll say, I need to talk to you. They're like, not now, I can't. But you need to you have to be like a bulldog sometimes. And that means with your raise time. And you need to, in effect, nicely, very nicely, you're pushing somebody against the wall saying, I want to know the answer as to why. And if they say because we can't afford it, then that's a decision you have to make as to whether you stay there or not. And you may feel that you need to stay for another year and then you'll leave until you build up your legal chops, your legal knowledge, your legal experience, so that you have something, and then you make the jump and you go to some other law firm and you ask for more money. When you go to a second law firm, they're going to ask, well, why are you leaving that firm and all of that? And it could be that you want to increase your experience, and whatever the reasons are, but you have to bump up your salary at that point. You don't need to tell them that, but you need to bump up your salary and be brave and ask for more money, and believe you deserve it. And the way you believe you deserve it is to write all the stuff down that you've learned, and then look at it and go, whoa, I have really learned a lot. If you don't write it down, then you're not sure, and you might even feel insecure, like, I don't know much. Where's that coming from? your history, your past. So you've got to change that. You've got to change your mindset and how you work and how you deal with employers. And this is your career. It's not them controlling it, it's you controlling it at every step. And that's the mindset to change. Not that you're at an employer's beck and call. You are to be loyal while you're there and to give them an 8-hour workday and do well and not be a slacker. But other than that, you don't owe them your entire work history, your future. You don't, because the loyalty honestly won't be there for you. And the jobs are not going to be there that where you're there 20 years. That just isn't going to happen. It happened for my parents, and for a time, and then my father was fired because they fired all the managers who were in their 40s. Yeah, my husband was let go after 28 years because they wanted to get all the high salaried people out of the way so they could make the numbers look better so they could sell off the division. Yeah. So don't think that there's loyalty there. Loyalty begets loyalty, and it's not usually a 180. And so you have to think about your own career. And if you're not looking at it as a career, that's a mistake. All right. So just ask. And, I can't say enough the value that you will get out of attending the Paralegal Inner Circle class as a person who hasn't, if you have not worked in the legal field. This is not for paralegal veterans. It's for people who are green. So I encourage you to join us before registration closes. Then start to make believe, hun, that you are on a witness stand and you're being pummeled and you're being asked, why do you deserve a raise? Why? And start writing down everything you've learned. Start racking your brain about everything you've learned how to do. Get it on paper. Get it on paper. So it's not that it's something you should be afraid of, like they're going to, that they're going to require evidence, but they may ask you, why do you think you deserve one? Because attorneys are used to questioning people, grilling people, so be prepared. But this is for you, for your head, more than them. You go, I really did learn so much. I did learn how to do this type of filing with the court. I did learn how to upload an order. I did learn how to look up that rule. I did learn, just start to think about everything you've learned and go from there, okay? And you'll be prepared and you'll be confident. Now, the letdown is if they don't give you a raise, and then you have decisions to make. I've been there, and for that first job, I left. And it was the best decision. And then the third job was going back with the attorney who mentored me, because he broke away, the partnership dissolved, and that law firm was no longer there. And so I went to work for him for 2 years, I think it was. And then I left his employ, okay? Yeah, do that. You got to protect your career and look at it as a career, as something that has a lot of value. Even if you're green yet, you're there almost a year, you've learned a lot. So write it all down and pat yourself on the back. And you'll have that. And then keep that and keep adding to it. And, all the documents you've learned how to do. It's very important. All right, guys, this video is long enough. So I will hopefully see some of you come in and join in the class. Again, if you're totally green, first step is to get the book Legal Break-In. Second step is to come into class with us, because it's not about teaching you how to land a job. That's part of it. But the big part of it is giving you those practical chops, the practical knowledge, so that you don't have to feel like you're spinning your wheels the first day on the job. We'll talk, in fact, Friday, I'm doing a live video about a certain type of paralegal that somebody asked me about in our private Facebook group. And I'm going to go into detail about what that type of paralegal does and what happens on the first day, and going into some dress code questions. But then on Tuesday, I'm going to answer another some questions that people are posing between now and then, for our first official answer session. So twice a month, I go into the group live, and it's available on replay too, and answer questions that people pose and do additional teaching as well. Okay, so have a great day. I will talk to you in tomorrow's video with another good topic. All right. Oh, let me see. Yeah, good, Robert. Good deal. Robert, based on what you've said in the past about, the raise, you run your career. Okay? Take my advice and you run your career. This is your baby. This is, you direct it, nobody else. And you direct how much money you make. And so when you go to your second job, everybody, you ask for more money. They don't need to know what you're currently making. Hint, hint. They don't need to know that. Because they don't want to give you much more. I went from one job to another and gave myself a big raise, but I had, 4 or 5 years experience at that point. And I gave myself a 7 grand raise because, first of all, I was underpaid at the job I was at. And I needed to raise it up and keep getting up there because I was behind a little bit. And I knew what other paralegals were making, and I was very behind. I moved to a different state, and they were paid lower in the city I was in. So I got it up there. It took me about 5 or 6 years, but I got it up there. So it's important to take care of yourself. Okay? All right, that's it. I'm surprised the live stream actually stayed up this long. Have a great one, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Pose questions, make comments below. Love hearing what you have to say, okay?